The views, thoughts, and opinions expressed in the podcast belong solely to the hosts and not the host's past, present, or future employers. Hello everybody, this is Brian for Break It Down Security. This week is part 2 of our discussion with Danny Akacki on mergers and acquisitions. We're going to go a little deeper this week. Some of the things we're going to talk about is knowing how to find talent in the acquired organization. That works for you in two ways: by finding SMEs that may be working with specific technology stacks that your company may not have skills in. May also help you, work out headcount, and if you do any right sizing on both sides of the org, you'll know which people to evaluate and which ones to keep. Red flags to look for when hearing from management. You'll hear some specific terms that Danny mentions during our conversation as things that maybe you should look out for, or maybe you should know when things aren't going so right, or maybe when things are going so right. When you might want to bring in third parties to assist in making your M&A transition easier. Might be a pen test company, might be an auditing firm or a compliance firm, might be a company specifically created for making mergers and acquisitions easier for orgs. Also, bringing in a third party can assist your team in not having to spend as many cycles, which if you're in a very heavy operations-based organization, taking that time away may actually hurt your own organization. So having a third party coming in might be helpful. Also, we talk about social engineering attacks and security type attacks that bad actors might engage in, either from your company or the acquiring company, that might cause issues or might give them additional information that would give them an edge on stock price or filings for the SEC or something like that. So there's a lot of good information this week. Hope you enjoy, and we're going to get right into it right now with Danny and Ms. Berlin, Mr. Betcher, and myself. Have a great week. I think the other thing to think about is you want to get in there as soon as the M&A is announced and that they'll let you, because if there are talented people working at that organization, they know where the wind is blowing. So they'll automatically start, brushing off their resumes and start looking for, new jobs. And the talented people are going to get poached first. So if you get in there 6-8 months later, you may not have the same skill sets or knowledge, found repositories, that were happening, because, you've got folks that are either assuming that they're never going to get replaced, or you're going to have the people that, for whatever reason, they can't look for a job or can't find a job because, one, they can't sell themselves, or they're just not qualified enough to find new jobs. So, you want to get in there. You want to, like Danny said, keep everything fairly positive, but, be practical. The ability to integrate these things is very important. So if you're acquiring a company, does the amount of work that you're doing at your current job, if you're the company acquiring a company, what does that look like? Do you have to halt stuff, or does timelines, we can't do this until we figure out what the company B is doing? What does the work look like there? Do you halt all work, or do you not take on any new work and just continue working on what you're doing, or any new projects there? Or is the M&A considered like the full all hands on deck project?
No, I mean, at least in my experience, it could go either way. A lot of the times, once that thing is announced, again, there are still those like upper echelon things happening. So it could be business as usual. One of the common things in both companies, especially if you're publicly traded, is you'll see a hiring freeze, right? Like you might have had headcount, and then the next day you don't have the headcount anymore, or the headcount is frozen. Right. So that is, in my experience, one of the most common, if not the very first things to stop on both sides. Right. If you are the acquiring company, you're probably still going about what you're doing. things might get shifted because depending on why you acquired this company, maybe you acquire them for their tech, maybe something that you need. So maybe whatever existing projects you have that rely on that tech, maybe those get either, not shelved, but like paused or reallocated somewhere. But no, you're usually just full, you're still business as usual for at least a little while. It's the headcount thing, and that
Right.
will hurt, especially if you needed that.
Right.
You see that especially in devs and architecture, especially if you're a product company, right? Because you're a product company, you still got releases to meet, right? And you have
Right.
features to meet and things like that. So how does that get affected? Normally you're still going to be working, except now you have to watch out for siphoning of those resources to something related to the M&A, which is something to look out for. But yeah, it's most likely at least a headcount.
Okay. All right. Have you ever worked at an organization that's brought a third party in? Because obviously, maybe you only have so many cycles in the day, and you can't go over and talk to the IT folks. I have seen there's several links in our show notes talking about bringing on a third party to help out with that, to help manage expectations on both sides, and they're one of the things they said, oh, is yeah, you want to develop a playbook so you can do this again and again. And I was like, well, why have to develop your own playbook to do it again and again when you can have a third party come in that already has a formula by which they can do those kinds of things? So, have you ever had an experience working with a third party that has to evaluate you or you being evaluated?
No, I mean for me, no. I've been, that's not something I experienced with because like the acquiring has been big enough where they have their M&A department, like they have things
Wow.
like that. Yeah.
Okay.
Or yeah. So like they have those kind of things, and then once they have those logistics down, you have whatever your tiger team is or whatever from different, like, hey, we need you to do this, we need you to do this. Maybe in some of like the other processes that wasn't privy to, like HR and legal and things like that, maybe they brought in some third parties. But as far as my distinct responsibilities, like, no, it was always us doing the things and building the relationships and talking to people. I mean, I'm sure it exists. I mean, obviously it exists, but I don't have experience with it.
Okay. Um,
Do you have anything that you wish you would have changed earlier on?
Yes.
Now that
I
you're like 10 of them.
Yeah. I panicked. From my first one my first couple that I got caught up in absolute panic. Like the bank thing we acquired, and then we got acquired. And I was like, oh man, I thought I hit my stride, and now, I'm trying to get married and blah, 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 blah. And I definitely made some rash decisions about it. Turns out it was a good rash decision because it led me to security, and this is like my calling, so that's fine. But then, I definitely, there was another one. Oh, here's a fun one. We've talked about M&A as opposed to one entity purchases another, or vice versa, whatever. How about being a part of a giant company, call it SME, and you are in one of their practices and they start divesting business units. They say, we are no
Okay.
longer in these verticals. We are no longer in, and that's one of the verticals that they are divesting is yours. And then you
Okay.
hear, do what's best for your family. And your family is about to grow because your wife is pregnant. So then what do? How do you not panic? Even though you told yourself from the first two times to not panic, this is a different kind of panic. So there are several kinds of panic, as we all know. So, but yes, now I take a much more pragmatic view of it. I take it's nothing till it's something. And even when it is something, I have been preparing, even in, how we all sit back and we have imaginary arguments with people and you wish you could say this thing to this person and you're planning to say this and blah, blah, blah. I do that with my jobs. So I'm always prepared for these things now. Like when the one company came in and acquired my company, and then they said everybody gets a job. But then 3 months later, my job's not about to exist anymore. And do you then try to beg for another job within the company, or do you take the money and run, knowing you're secure, you can go find another job elsewhere?
So what did you do? You said you made a rash decision, ended up being okay. What was the rash decision?
So that was when things were getting divested. I ran. I was like, and so this company had moved my wife and I from Pennsylvania to New Orleans. So we moved for this job, and they moved us down there, and they gave me sign on, and they paid for movers and blah blah blah. And 9 months later, I suddenly had a very unsure future. Nobody was giving me answers, and I just interviewed and I got a job back in New York, and I left. And then of course it was less than a year. And the only reason we did that is because we didn't have support system all the way down south. We had support systems in the greater Northeast, so that's why we went home, because none of us knew how to raise a we'll probably be okay with a baby, but just in case, let's go home. So that was a rash decision. I mean, and it turns out everybody on my team stayed for like a whole nother year. I probably could have like waited that out a little bit, but there were some very certain circumstances that we were not comfortable with. And then that ended up being like, oh, you left before. This was a whole thing too. A little side war story is, as I mentioned, they paid for us to come down there, got a sign-on bonus, 9 months. 9 months wasn't a year. So then they said, well, it's unsure, so you won't have to pay that back. And I said, okay. But then my exit interview came, and she's like, do you have a check for us? So what the hell do you mean you have a check for you? Like, oh, you have to pay back your moving. You have to pay back your expenses. And I was like, the hell I do. And to this day, how old is he now? 5.5 years. They ain't getting a dime, because I said, listen, you guys said my job wasn't guaranteed. And this HR person had the gall to say, no jobs are ever guaranteed. I almost jumped across the desk.
She sounds delightful.
Oh, that's a whole nother show, dear Brian. But anyway, that's a very long.
I'm sorry, I shouldn't stereotype. It could have been a
no. It's fine.
Person.
It was yeah. No, she was not nice. And then she was talking about loyalty and stuff, and then 2 months later she left too. So haha. But anyway, that's a very long-winded way of saying the one thing that I wish that I had maybe not done. I mean, everything ended up okay. Obviously, I'm sitting here talking to you. Right. And this is like this is a highlight for me, always is. But think a little slower, right? Like, at least slow it down. Look at all of the moves. Anybody who's ever played chess knows to look at the entire board. And sometimes you have to move the piece one spot, not all the way up the board, planning for the next 7. It's exactly like that. There's a reason chess really is a game of kings. I highly recommend it to everybody.
Mm-hmm. Cool.
Very long-winded answer. I'm sorry.
No, it's all good. It's all good. So I've been on a third party, or have known a third party, and it was a pen testing company, not the one I'm at currently, but pen testing company that had to come in and look at a company that was being acquired to see if their organization sucked, or if their product was okay, because there's a trust thing there. And before we started recording, I mentioned that finding out that a company's been breached can often cost them millions and millions of dollars. Like when Verizon bought AOL, or not AOL, but Yahoo, during their M&A period, they were found to have been breached, and it actually affected the cost of the acquisition by $350 million, or 7% of the value of the original. Having these brought in and being able to test this is definitely something important.
One of the companies that I worked for previously, when we were one of our customers was getting acquired, and they ended up suing the old board of directors for the company they acquired, because their state of security was so bad. And they lied about it for the acquisition.
There are all manner of sins that get uncovered later.
Oh, yeah.
And especially when there's money involved, like, those things have a very long shelf life. Mm-hmm. I mentioned the other thing about me having to pay back the money. I still get a call once a year. Yeah, they don't, they still, but yes, once those skeletons are unearthed, oh boy.
Yep. Yep. Wow. Yeah. So I think the important thing as a conquering company is to know what you're looking for when you're needing to talk to people. Like Mr. Betcher said, policies, processes, configuration management is important. How they're doing business. Some of these organizations, you're going to find that they're not doing business well at all. Not just from an IT or a security point of view, but from a project management point of view or a product development point of view, they may just be flying by the seat of their pants. I want to talk about the security side of this. I saw some articles saying that, you have to let your people be aware that they could be the subject of social engineering attacks, especially the acquiring companies. Like, oh, look, we're being acquired by X. Click here to figure out what your benefits are. And have you ever, Danny? I know Danny has worked at security companies before, but security companies are probably the worst for falling for this kind of shit. So, what have you ever seen anything like that where people have either done phishing tests or there's been some social engineering attacks that were launched because somebody found out they were being acquired or were involved in the acquiring?
Yeah, I mean, you see it all the time. As soon as that announcement gets made out to the world, I mean, not for nothing. A lot of these are a lot of these attacks on with social engineering are crimes of opportunity, right? So, I would not be surprised if there are people that actively troll, looking for those kinds of announcements. But no, it's definitely something to be aware of. There was just an article not too long ago, not necessarily related to like M&A activity or whatever, but it had to do with I forget which company it was, but I roasted them on Twitter. Their phishing campaign talked about giving people, yeah,
Yes.
ooh, GoDaddy.
Yes.
That's
I
right.
remember that.
Oof. And their
Bad
phishing
daddy.
campaign was, here's the information on your bonus because of COVID and things like that. And then it turns out it was a phishing campaign.
Yep.
So that's a particularly craven, especially, and it wasn't even an actor. It was a company that had paid. Like, I'm not sure if it was GoDaddy
Sure
paid
that,
somebody.
yeah, sure, that works. Like, if a bad person is doing it,
Yeah.
that's one
Yes.
thing.
Yeah, that is definitely something that maybe, but what I have seen with that is not paying enough attention to it. Like, you think the M&A is the M&A and then things, whatever, and then maybe there's not enough emphasis put on, like, hey, any merger or acquisition is a very vulnerable spot. It is, I don't care how big the deal is and billions of dollars or whatever, it is a very, transition is always vulnerable. It is, because it is new, and
Right.
defenses are either let down intentionally or unintentionally. So any in that those miscreants have, I'm talking to you, Snow. Yeah, I can absolutely see that, and have seen stuff like that. Now, people will also, especially if you're paying people to do these phishing campaigns for you, maybe you chill on that for a minute. Like, you got enough to worry about doing the actual merger. Let's not do some screwy stuff in the middle. But that just means there's more opportunity for the actual bad people to come in and do that, and then suddenly the bad guys have eyes. They'll sit and they'll watch. They have eyes into this whole merger thing, and then they're in. So yeah, absolutely, that's a risk.
Yeah, and the problem is, and I've got a link in the show notes to talking about how hackers are using spearphishing. When you go to acquire somebody, and you're a publicly traded company themselves, you have to file with the SEC that you are wishing to acquire this organization. And if that company is publicly traded, they have to go, oh, we're being acquired, blah, blah. So those are publicly accessible files that can be searched for. Only reason I know about some of this is because I worked at a company that went IPO, and you could actually search the SEC filings for their filings for becoming an IPO, and I found other things that were going on as well that were public knowledge, and using that information and a little LinkedIn and a little Googling and a little OSINT there, you could potentially spearfish people, asking them questions about the M&A stuff, or setting them up for failure by, hey, we noticed you're, doing an M&A, click here to, understand what is going on in your organization. Here's a PDF of the announcement from our CEO, click here. And you're opening up a PDF that's got a shell in it or something with a fake PDF. So I think communications is important. If you're going to do that, I think even before you file, management, if you're a leader in an organization, or you're, some of the people who listen to this go, well, I won't even know until 5 months later when I'm, being told, or I see it on Twitter or something. But if you're a senior leader in the organization, I think communication and ways of communicating the M&A is going to be important. The marketing team or the PR team, the public relations team is going to be the single point of truth. So if you get something from, Joe Bob Billy at, legitnewsorg.com, don't believe it. Don't click on it. Put out that kind of information ahead of time, so that way, people will understand. Or please send to fish at, or whatever you have in your IT organization, if you've gotten information about that, at least in the next year or so, and know that all communications official will come from M&A at, your PR firm, or your internal company, or your head of HR or something like that. Having your coordinating those communications ahead of time, I think would cut down on any kind of issues there. And, just to tell people that, hey, don't tell your, Uncle Jim Bob that, it's going to happen, because the company that's acquiring is going to have a bump in stock, and the company that's going to be acquired, the stock is going to drop or raise. And if people are shorting that, then that can be found out as well. So, don't tell your aunt to buy 100 shares of stock in your company, wink, wink, because, you could end up in Club Fed or something like that. I mean, 100 is not a lot, but 100 is still 100 charges, or, a felony or whatever. So,
yeah. I mean, I can give one actual example of how this would go down. Caveat: I am not a professional social engineer. I've studied it a lot. I am not a Snow. I am not a Jason Street. But here is my one experience of this actually working. At DEF CON 25, I took part in the SECTF, the Social Engineer Village. Just to give you an idea of how this might go down, had I found out that my company, which by the way was Nintendo, that I got assigned, had I found out that they were going through some kind of acquisitions or whatever, I would have absolutely used this. I got in the booth. I found out I called their support phone numbers, got a hold of a support person, and said, hey, this is so-and-so from IT at their corporate center up in Seattle or whatever, and said, hey, we saw, there was some weird network traffic, and we're just calling to check up. Could you tell me what you see in your system tray? We're just trying to get our system straight, or things like that. And they're like, oh yeah, well, there's a little M with a shield, so now I know you run McAfee, and now I know what VPN you run. Now I know what your work schedule. And it was so easy, just in that pretext of being with IT. And I had OSINTed some of their IT people on LinkedIn, so I knew a name. I knew, and this was all this is stuff you could find within 15-20 minutes, depending on how open the company is. So imagine taking that worked instantly. I got like 7 flags in a minute from this one person.
Nice.
Now imagine waiting a bit after an M&A, and now these announcements have gone out about, you might be hearing from a new IT person, or you might be hearing from this. Like, imagine how even easier that would be if you couch this with like, oh, you're going to be hearing from somebody, and you hear from somebody, it's not the real person. So that's just my one experience actually doing a vishing thing for a contest. I'm sure there are professional SEs out there that have much better stories than that. Just an example of how this might go down.
Right. Yep. And, it's not just, phishing and disclosure of the M&A, but, you could have data breaches. One of the other things during the integration or the change in IT is, let's say you have to put in firewall rules, or, change VPN locations, and somebody fat fingers in a configuration wrong. Now you've got logs being sent to China versus your newly company acquired, SIM system or something like that. You run the risk of doing data breaches if you're not doing everything right. There's a I have another link in the show notes from Info Security Magazine about they mentioned this the phishing stuff, but they also mentioned, risking of a data breach because the amount of data sharing increases dramatically between the organizations. So, you might have somebody email, oh yeah, my email's broken, send it to this Gmail account or something like this, oh yeah, I my policy, my email inbox is full because of all this stuff. Send it to this, at Gmail account or something like that. So I think rules of engagement when you're working with IT or, working with folks like that is important, making sure that, okay, all official communications is going to be done. Any documentation or artifacts is going to be uploaded to OneDrive or, only this specific Gmail account and, only people with certain access is going to be able to have, the ability to, move files in there, view those files. Because artifacts may be important for, just signing things or, transfer of ownership of licenses or, license keys or something like that. If somebody's got an enterprise Splunk license, for instance, how expensive is that for an organization to be able to grab a hold of an enterprise Splunk license? I'm not sure how licenses work at Splunk, if it's a key or, if it's something they have to download, but, or Amazon license, if you've got an Amazon account and the other company has an Amazon account for AWS purposes, having access to those things is important. So
there's lots of noise to hide in.
Right. Exactly. So from a being acquired point of view, what does the workload look like there? Should you stop doing any new work because that the acquisition of your company is going to cause a lot of new work? So, let's say you're doing X, Y, and Z, and they're like, no, you have to drop everything and put 2FA on all your systems because we require that. Should you expect that in an IT or a security organization, and maybe not take on any new major projects?
Yeah, I mean, that's going to be a decision that's made for you. I mean, and that's a big question. Like, for instance, I'll give another one. When Iceberg was acquired by Gigamon, it's two different things. Like nothing, like everything that I had witnessed so I got there right when they got acquired, but nothing changed because they acquired us for what we had, and the only thing they did was they renamed it. It took them 2 years to rename the thing, so nothing really stopped there. It kind of is like nobody makes that decision on their own saying, well, I'm just going to stop doing this because like who knows what's going to happen. That's going to come down from 3 or 4 rungs up. As far as your motivation to do things, like that might be different. That's something you can make a personal you can make a personal decision about. But no, I mean, it's like there will be somebody that'll tell you from the upper ranks of like, hey, like now your attention's over here, or we're scrapping this part of the project, or we're moving this and doing this. Especially if it's something like when we got acquired by Amazon, they were just absorbing the tech, and at the very end it got completely changed at the end. So like we're still working, but in different ways. So it's a very broad, it's a long way of saying, it depends.
Right. Okay. I think the only, okay. So you said you worked at Iceberg, which got bought by Gigamon.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if you were customer facing in that respect, but
yes.
What did you tell your customers about, at Iceberg? Oh yeah, we're being bought by Gigamon. I'm sure the first thing the customer said was, well, how does that affect me?
Yeah. I mean, so actually funny you said, like, if I'm customer facing, I actually was a senior technical account manager, which means,
okay.
Yeah. So I was the interface with the client. I was having biweeklies with them and all kinds of things. And it's pretty much, I was always honest with them. And I said, listen, hi, I'm new here and you just got acquired. Don't worry about it. When there's something to worry about, I'll tell you. If there's something with the product, I'll tell you. Product teams will stay the course for a while, right? Like, especially if you bought us because, again, it's all in context. If they bought them because of our product, you're probably good. You're like, it's not going to change too much. Of course, it's going to continue evolving and releasing. The things you might get into trouble with, and we did get in trouble with, was, what's in the new release. Like, did enough work go into the new release? Did enough features you wanted to go in? So I'm always honest with them. I'm like, listen, this might change. This isn't going to change. This will change. But I always, especially if you are customer facing within your power and what you're comfortable with, and what you're authorized to do. But then again, for me, I've been through this stuff enough where I'm like, what I'm authorized to say and what I'm going to say might be slightly different because I care about my customers. So if stuff's hitting the fan, I want them to know about it. But no, I just say, listen, like, this is a thing. They bought us because they want to be seen as more of a security company. But the product's still the same. I'm here for you. It's still going to function the same. If anything, it's probably going to get a little bit better. So yeah, no, I will always level with my customers, because I am working for them. And if there's something on the horizon, because then you have to keep that sense of trust. You have to keep that relationship, because when things at a year do start happening, attrition starts happening, like, they notice those things, somebody who they've been working with previously, and now you're on a call and say, hey, how's so-and-so? And now I hate having to surprise them. So whenever anybody on my team left, incidentally, my entire team ended up leaving. Anytime somebody left, part of my biweekly with my customer was, hey, FYI, I know you've worked with so-and-so before. They've moved on. It's not a huge thing yet. But I will keep them apprised of any changes, even if it doesn't directly affect them, because it's all about the aesthetics and the appearance of it. So I'm always, yeah. But yeah, it's definitely something to be cognizant of. Somebody somewhere will say something of like, oh, it's better not to say something. It's going to come back to bite you in the ass. You really have to have a good feel for that about what you can and can't say.
Right. Communication needs to be as open and as transparent as possible. Obviously you don't want to be telling them anything that, might be business sensitive, but you
Right.
definitely want
NDA,
to,
whatever.
Right. You definitely want to alleviate their fears, because, if you were to lose a big contract, that wouldn't look good on the company that's being acquired. Oh, you lost a $3 million contract, or, whatever. So it would bite your bottom line. So Mr. Betcher, I'm sorry, I've been asking a lot of questions. Ms. Berlin, any thoughts, anything? There's so much minutia, I think, in regards to these things. You won't know until you actually get in there. So, but Mr. Betcher, go ahead.
Well, I think if the acquiree company resist from a security standpoint, they don't want to implement security tools for whatever reason, they just don't have the time, it's too much, it might impact their systems. I've seen that so many times. We don't want another agent, it's going to hose our systems, so stop putting antivirus on our on our servers or whatever. I found that a good red team does wonders, because it kind of puts things into perspective when the acquiree gets totally owned by hackers, while at the same time they're resisting security enhancements.
If they're in a position to understand it.
If they're in a position to understand what just happened, yes.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. I think that's interesting. So, Mr. Betcher, you're working IR. Ms. Berlin, you're working IR. Have you ever run into a case where the IR teams aren't fully compatible, or they have different visibility? I mean, Mr. Betcher, you said you've worked with companies that have been acquired. Did they have an IR team, or were they big enough to have an IR team? What did that look like for you, and having to deal with their monitoring versus your monitoring, or your methods versus their methods?
I mean, it's never that compatible. I mean, every company is different.
Right.
And so when you, as the acquiring company, have to enhance their security, implement some of your tools, the main thing is you have to say things like, oh, we have a SOC, so you won't have to do all this monitoring yourself. We can offload that to them. It's going to be nothing for them, right? To take on some of your alerts,
Right.
or all of them for that matter. Oh, we have a digital forensics team. So if something does happen that we need, you don't have to hire an outside agency to come in and perform forensics. We have a whole team for that. So there's a lot of benefit to the acquisition. And if you approach it like Danny said, have those conversations. You have to be open and honest with them.
Cool.
Right.
Okay. All right. Miss Berlin, anything you'd like to add to that about IR or monitoring or anything like that?
I mean, all the ones that I've had to deal with went from nothing to something.
Really? Okay.
Yeah. So like zero security department or very, very small IT departments to actually having something. So it was mostly value add, and they didn't really know what they were missing. Some of them didn't really know how to handle what they were getting too. So yeah, that's always that's why I made the comment on, giving them a pen test during doing that definitely could have a positive impact to getting them to understand why things would need to change.
Mm-hmm.
But in other cases, they might not even know what a pen test is or any of the ramifications of it depends on like how it's being presented, I guess.
Right.
Yeah, I guess that's and then I guess the one other thing I wanted to ask is, have you seen Silicon Valley?
No,
the show? Nobody?
I heard it's good though.
Yeah,
All of it. Literally all of it.
So like, did that give you flashbacks?
Oh my God. Having worked on two or three different product teams, yeah. It's always a box. It's always a God-forsaken box. I don't know. I forget if you guys curse on here or not, but
This is the first startup that I've worked for, right? And watching that, I'm like, holy shit.
it is so similar. That's why that show is so amazing, is because we're like, oh yeah, that's exactly word for word how these things go.
Yes. Yep.
great.
Feature releases and
highly
I
recommend.
need to go check that out.
Highly
Yeah.
recommend.
I can't believe you never watched it.
Nah, dude, there's so many shows.
I know
out
there's
there
so many, but
everybody's
that's got to be in the
wanting.
upper. That's got to be on your radar, man.
I haven't watched Mr. Robot either, so.
Oh, you're in for a treat.
No, I'm good. I'm really all right.
Really?
Yeah, it's actually I don't know. I get turned off whenever people are like, "Oh my God, you got to watch this! It's so much great!" And it's like, okay, I see the vein throbbing in your forehead, dude. You're gonna die.
That's one of those shows that I wish I could experience for the first time again, like Breaking Bad, where it's gonna be awesome every single time, but there's that feeling of like, oh my God, especially like the final episode.
Yet another show I have not watched.
Why are you the way you are?
Look, I ain't got time. I'm still trying to get back through Stargate SG-1 again. So, and I haven't even watched all of Battlestar Galactica, the new ones.
What?
I know. See, there you go. Made it through seven episodes in the first season.
Podcast.
What about the Expanse?
Right. Nope, never seen it. Never seen it.
I'm happy you made this revelation now. Because if you made these revelations at the beginning of the show, I'm not sure if I could have made it.
Yeah. So I think we're about done. This is going to be one of those podcasts where I'll be out walking tomorrow and go, oh damn, I should have asked that question. Oh, I should have asked that question.
You know what? We know where to find Danny.
I will drop everything I am doing for Brakesec anytime. I'll literally drop my child.
Well, oh my, don't do that.
He's got a really hard head. Don't worry about it. Like he bounces.
Oh, okay.
They bounce.
Yeah.
Don't drop your weights or anything like that either. So,
I drop them all the time.
Yeah. But yeah, I'm thinking about things like, integrating products or similar products or whatever. And, I definitely think that there's probably a lot going on there that we haven't talked about, but, we'll leave that feedback for the people who are listening. If anybody's had any, product mergers where it's like, oh yeah, we're going to take this endpoint security solution and that endpoint security solution and just kind of munge them together and see what happens, or, this logging solution or whatever, or, oh, hey, we're Elasticsearch and we're no longer free, or, whatever. Burn. Anyway. So, Danny, how would people get a hold of you if they wanted to talk more about,
my
you know, what you do at your real job, or, you know, just internet in general and security in general?
Yeah, definitely not LinkedIn. Don't look for me there.
Too late.
I check in like every 6 months, and there's like
That's
80
where I hit,
messages.
that's where I hit on people at.
Yeah, right. It's a hey, baby. So no, I am on, for better or for worse, an unhealthy amount on Twitter. So it's at the Akacki, or as Lintile pronounces it, Akacki.
That's how I pronounce it too.
It's fine. I don't even care anymore. It's 40 years of me not bothering correcting people. So it's that, but also I do, my other pride and joy is my Twitch streaming I do a lot of, which is twitch.tv/2OC stream. And you can see every interview I've ever done. I try to take after Brakesec and do good interviews, or just general dumpster fiery type stuff. You can find on youtube.com/second order chaos.
Nice. Okay. Very cool. All right, Miss Berlin, how about you? What are you doing?
What am I doing? Just working.
But you got a nice house because of it.
I do have a nice house now. I still putting stuff away. I worked on my garage for like 4 hours today and yesterday.
Really?
And it's almost done. Yeah.
You're going to be one of those people that put their car in their garage, right?
Oh, definitely.
Okay, good.
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
We got so many people in my neighborhood that park their cars on the street, and I'm like, I know you have a garage. I mean, I see their garage open and it's full of shit.
It's either that or like actually have to clean off my car when it snows. So,
oh yeah.
Right.
At least in the winter time.
It is such a smug sense of superiority when I have 2 carports, and when everybody else has snow in their cars and you have none, you're just like, I'm so much better than you.
That's right. That's right. Oh, look at me in my non-icy car.
Oh. Yeah. Peasants.
Yes. Filthy heathens.
Yeah, look at you. You parked on the street. Oh, how gauche.
Oh, goodness. All right, Mr. Betcher. Oh, no, Ms. Berlin, you're not done yet.
Yeah, no, you can find me on Twitter too, at InfoSystir, INFOSYSTIR.
Excellent. All right. Mr. Betcher, how about you? You obviously put your car in the garage as well, yes?
Well, I have a carport, so sometimes.
Right on.
I used to park it in the carport, but whenever my wife backed out, she would hit the post, which is right down the middle.
Oh, we do it all the time.
So I replaced my side mirror twice. So then we just stopped parking in the carport. So
goodness. Okay. Well,
but I live in the country anyway, so it doesn't interfere with traffic.
And you don't have snow.
That's
I don't have snow.
That's true. You have hail though. You have the rare hailstorm, you know.
Very rare, in which case we'll move the cars in. Yeah.
There you go. All right. So how would people get a hold of you and tell people what you're all about there, Mr. Betcher?
I'm all about the incident response, and you can find information on log-emd.com. That's my project, and on Twitter at BetcherPwned, BOETTCHER, my last name, and then PWNED.
Very nice. Okay. So we are working on a lot of things. We have our Slack that is very active. If you're interested in joining our Slack and having a good discussion with a bunch of folks who are like-minded, and maybe not like-minded, you can join us. Email us at bds.podcast@gmail.com, or you can hit us up on our official Twitter at Brakesec, BRAKESEC. Thank you to all of our patron sponsors and donations from that. We have a tip jar. That's what we treat it for. It's the way that we pay for things like hosting and helping out with other nonprofit engagements. As a matter of fact, last Saturday I had an officer meeting for the IEF, which is the InfoSec Education Foundation, and we are going to, as one of our first initiatives, sponsor the Women Unite Over CTF 3.0. It is being ran by Point 3 Security, and they are doing a CTF of sorts online. And It's to promote women in information security with an annual competition. So there are thousands, 1,000 participants, 100 countries. It's going to happen on 13th of February from 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. Eastern time. You can go to, I believe, point3.net to find out more information about that. I didn't tell them actually that we were going to mention this on the show, but it's just really awesome. And it seems like something that they should get involved with. So yeah, you can go register over there. It's free. So you can do that. And they're doing various sponsorships there. So we're going to be supporting them to do that. So we're really happy to do that. If you have another educational initiative, you can hit us up. I'm the president of the InfoSec Education Foundation. So you can go to our website, infoseceducationfoundation.com. I know it's a mouthful. And, talk to us and see if, you'd like to help sponsor further initiatives or, sponsor the podcast or sponsor a local meetup that we do like CSEC East or help us out with our conference, InfoSec Campout. We're a nonprofit charity. So any monies you give us would be gratefully accepted. So have a store. If you go to brakesec.com/store, you can get a t-shirt, a mug, masks, stickers. I know stickers are a big thing since we're not physical anymore in the meat space, but I sent some over to our friend BSD Bandit along with a t-shirt because he's like, I love the show. And I was like, oh, thanks. And it was the least I could do for all of the good stuff that he puts out on Twitter every day. So you can go to brakesec.com/store and check that out. So I think that's it. Mm-hmm. If anybody has any other comments, questions, or concerns before we go, Danny, it's always a pleasure having you on the show, and you're always welcome to come back.
I assure you, the pleasure is all mine. I love it. I love you guys so much.
Well, I appreciate that, and if you have anybody else, if you have any other comments or topics you'd like to come and talk about on the show with us, we'd love to have you back as soon as possible.
Absolutely.
Right on. Okay, well, that was it for Brakesec this week. Have a great week. Be kind to one another. Take care of yourself because you're the only you have. And we'll talk to you again soon.
Bye.
Bye.